It's over 36 hours removed from the United States striking suspected nuclear enrichment sites in Iran, officially marking the beginning of America's direct involvement in the Israel-Iran conflict. There are several questions now which are swirling in the wind. Questions that need answers, questions that the entire world, including viewers in India, are at the moment concerned about. What does this conflict mean for the Middle East, for regional peace, and indeed for world peace? To answer some of the questions, I'm joined by a very special guest today. I'm joined by Ambassador Reuven Azar. He's Israel's ambassador to India. Thank you very much, Mr. Azar, for joining us in the studio. I want to start by coming to the nub of the point. It's just about 36 hours since America struck Iranian nuclear sites. Have Israel, with their missile strikes, and America with their strikes, put the world in a far more dangerous place than it was just 2 weeks ago? Because now there is a fear of a more destabilized Middle East, which can't be good for the world. How would you respond to those who say Israel and the United States in concert have put the world in a more difficult, dangerous place?
On the contrary, Rajdeep, we have made the world a much safer place because Iran was actually having two plans to exterminate the state of Israel. The first plan was a plan to arm or to create nuclear weapons, and these sites were not suspected sites. They were verified sites in which nuclear activity was happening. The problem was with the clandestine sites that were undeclared. You had a group of criminal scientists that were actually assembling a nuclear weapon, and they were exploiting the time of negotiations. Instead of negotiating in good faith, they were trying to sneak out to a nuclear bomb. So we saved Israel and we saved the world from a nuclear-armed Iran. That's number one. The second reason that we are much safer now is because Iran was developing a huge program of ballistic missiles, Rajdeep, and they possess between 2,000 to 3,000 rockets, and they were building 300 rockets per month. That would take them within 6 years to 20,000 ballistic missiles. That was what they're planning. With that arsenal, they could have destroyed the state of Israel just with the missiles. They would continue to terrorize the entire region. So the fact that Israel systematically took out these capabilities from Iran is making the world a much safer place.
You're saying it's making the world a much safer place at a time when the United Nations Secretary General is calling for de-escalation and a ceasefire. Security Council members like China and Russia are calling for a ceasefire. India is calling for de-escalation. Is it not incumbent on Israel now to begin this process of de-escalation? Instead, what we're seeing is more tit-for-tat missile strikes just in the last 24 hours, Mr. Ambassador. So where is the de-escalation? Where is the prospect of a ceasefire?
Well, as we speak, the Iranians are refusing to engage in diplomacy. And we have seen the Iranian foreign minister only 2 days ago refusing to engage with the proposals the Europeans have put on the table.
But you started, if I may stop you there, Mr. Ambassador, Iran claims they're doing what they are in self-defense because this act of aggression last Friday, 2 Fridays ago, was started by Israel. So how can you then ask Iran now to engage in diplomacy? Isn't it incumbent on Israel first to take a call of ceasefire?
First of all, we are for negotiations. We are not against, and our Prime Minister has stated that. Second, the criminal state of Iran that has been trying to destroy us for the last 30 years, have been financing terrorism, has creating all these armies of proxies to attack us, have been actually attacking other countries, has been controlling 4 Arab capitals, have been firing at Saudi Arabia. These criminals, radical people that are oppressing their own people, they're claiming suddenly that their sovereignty is breached. It's ridiculous.
But it is a sovereign nation. I mean, it is Iran is a sovereign nation. You may see it.
We are a sovereign nation.
So are you.
Yes,
exactly.
But they have been attacking
Israel is a sovereign nation.
Look,
Iran is a sovereign nation. If Iran today claims that their sovereignty has been assaulted by what has been done by Israel in the last 10 days, are they wrong?
they can only blame themselves because they have been breaching the sovereignty of many other nations in the region. They have sworn to exterminate us. Actually, today, Rajdeep, we have hit a clock in Tehran that was counting down the days for the existence of our state. So if a country acts against the Charter of the United Nations and decides that it wants to exterminate another state and acts to do it, Israel had no choice but to prevent from them the means to execute their plan. And that's why we acted, and the Iranians can blame only themselves because they have been the aggressors for many years. And believe me, Rajdeep, many countries are relieved. Of course, people are concerned because people don't want escalation. But what we have done is not only to defend ourselves, what America has done, and we are very grateful for the leadership of the President of the United States. He has taken action to make the world a safer place.
You're saying he's taken action to make the world a safer place. You're saying this is to, in a way, defang Iran's nuclear program. Now, Iran claims that their nuclear program was not designed for military use. In fact, there are some reports which suggest that there is no hard evidence that Israel or the United States has that, as you claim, Iran was just weeks away from concretizing their nuclear program. So the question will arise, what now? What has suddenly changed for Operation Rising Lion to start 10 days ago? And what evidence do you have that Iran was weeks away from a nuclear program?
So first of all, it's clear that Iran was lying because even the IAEA has mentioned 2 weeks ago in a report that Iran was in non-compliance of the safeguards agreement of the NPT. It means that it had undisclosed clandestine activity that it didn't report to the IAEA, and when the IAEA received that information, the Iranians haven't been able to corroborate and to justify this fact. Iran has been enriching uranium to military level without no justification. So the Iranians have been lying, and we, after we saw that we managed to peel Iran's proxies, mainly Hezbollah, which also led to the fall of Asad regime, we had in our intelligence evidence that there is a clandestine group of criminal scientists that are assembling a weapon. We shared that information with the United States. The United States corroborated that information, and based on that information, we have taken action because we had no choice.
It's interesting you're saying this because the head of the U.S. intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, a Trump appointee, had actually, before a congressional hearing, said they had no evidence that that Iran was building its nuclear arsenal. This was as early as March this year. So you're saying she was lying, the Iranians were lying, the world wasn't being told the truth.
I'm not saying she was lying. I don't know what she said and when she said. What I know is that we shared this intelligence with the United States government. The United States government had this information, and they backed our action, they supported our action, and we were in sync. We coordinated this activity in order to remove...
You coordinated it, that's important. Yes. Israel and United States coordinated this activity.
Of course, of course. And we've been able, together, to remove this threat because Israel has created a path for our Air Force to remove the air defenses, to hit the nuclear sites. And it has given the freedom for the United States to end this operation by using these bunker-busting weapons.
But having used the bunker busting weapons, Mr. Ambassador, why then is Israel saying we still have unfinished work? Why do the missile strikes continue? The belief was, having used the bunker busting weapons on nuclear sites, surely now is the time for a ceasefire.
Well, as I said before, the Iranians have developed two threats. The first was a nuclear one, and the second is the ballistic missile program. Now, we have been able to hit some of their missile ballistic capability, the factories that are producing missiles. We've been going after the launchers. We've been able to hit more than 50% of the launchers. But unfortunately, the Iranians are still firing at Israel with lethal ballistic missiles. They've been able to fire barrages of about 2 dozen of ballistic missiles. And that is much less than what we had in the beginning, but it still constitutes a threat. So our Air Force is taking action right now, as we speak, over Iranian skies to continue neutralizing that threat.
So is it about neutralizing the Iranian nuclear threat, or is it about regime change? I just want to tell you, Mr. Ambassador, the US President Donald Trump posted on social media today, why wouldn't there be a regime change? Now, this comes on the back of several of your leaders, including your defense minister, who's called Ali Khamenei a modern-day Hitler who must go. Now, is this about then the nuclear threat, or are the goalposts changing with every couple of days? It started off by the nuclear threat, as you said. Now you've got the US president, you've got Israeli leaders, including your prime minister, suggesting this is now about regime change.
Well, look, we don't have a plan of regime change in our operative plans, okay? The government, the Israeli cabinet, has taken the decision to remove these two threats and to engage in diplomacy in order to have a permanent solution to this problem of the Iranian aggressive conduct.
Your defense minister very clearly said that there should be regime change.
Now, of course, we would like to see a situation in which the Iranian people are liberated. But it is not our job to do that. It's the job of the Iranian people. It's their decision.
So why say it? Why should Israel or the United States call for regime change in Iran? It is, as you rightly said, the decision of the Iranian people. I mean, they are a sovereign nation. They will decide what kind of government they want. It can't be decided by Israel or America.
We are not going to decide it. We don't have the plans to do it. We don't have the capability to do it. What we are doing, what we are saying is that this regime that has been oppressing us and the region, has been oppressing their people. We don't have anything against the Iranian people. On the contrary, we have a history of friendship that goes back 2,500 years with the Iranian people, with the Persians. Cyrus the Great emancipated our people and allowed our temple to be built in Jerusalem. We want to re-engage with the Iranian people. We identify, we sympathize, we think that this leader, Khamenei, that has committed so many crimes, he has to go to the dustbin of history. That is our position.
Okay, that is your position. The Iranian people may well see him as a spiritual leader. Tomorrow, if Iranians turn around and say, we want Benjamin Netanyahu to be put in the dustbin of history, can sovereign nations' leadership be decided by another country? Can you tell me today you want Khamenei in the dustbin of history? Isn't it morally unconscionable in the world we live that nations are going to call for removal of a particular elimination? The word used by one of your leaders was elimination of Khamenei. That is the operation. And I quote here an academic of Israeli descent, Mr. Avi Schleim, who calls it the act of a mafiosi. This is what mafiosis do, eliminate someone from another country.
I have a question for you, Rajdeep. If somebody was trying to kill you for the last 30 years, and have been using every means that they have in order to handicap you, in order to kill you, in order to assassinate you, in order to hit you, in order to amass the weapons that will ensure your destruction, wouldn't you be willing for that person to disappear?
But the language being used suggests this is not just about asking someone to disappear, it's actually looking to do a targeted assassination. Now, is that what Israel wants? You started off by saying this was about nuclear strikes because you believe there's an existential threat to Israel.
And I repeat,
but you moved on to now suggesting...
I repeat that Israel doesn't have a plan of regime change.
Doesn't have a plan.
That Israel would like to see a change of the regime, because that would be that would give hope to the Iranian people. It would give hope for the region in its entirety. So, as much as we wish something to happen, it doesn't mean we have a plan to do it. We are a democracy, and we concentrate in neutralizing the threats that are threatening our existence. That is what we're doing, and we are signaling to the regime of Iran that if it doesn't change its course, of course it will face more dangers.
Are you saying you would do to Iran what happened in Syria? You want a regime change. Assad's regime was removed in Syria. You've taken out the Hezbollah from Lebanon. Is that what Israel wants? Complete dominance, hegemony over the Middle East, where Israel will decide who remains in power and who doesn't?
No, first of all, we didn't remove Assad regime. The Assad regime was removed by other forces. We have neutralized Hezbollah because Hezbollah was firing at Israel. We never assassinated Bashar Assad, and we don't intervene in the internal matters of other countries. However, when there is somebody that is targeting us for so many years, trying to assassinate us, look, every bomb, every terrorist attack, every missile, every rocket, every ballistic missile, any attack, cyber attack, that Israel suffered in the 30 years, in the last 30 years, has an address. That's the Ayatollah Khamenei. You have to understand that.
Is that your answer, therefore, to someone like Avi Schleim, who I said is a British-Israeli professor emeritus at Oxford, who says Israel's attack on Iran is an act of aggression, not of self-defense?
Who cares about what he says? Who is he?
He's a respected academic. There is a lot of global opinion, as you know, which is divided on this issue. There are those who believe that Israel under Benjamin Netanyahu, with this doctrine of peace through war, is pushing the world into a dangerously escalating conflict. He's now dragged the United States into a conflict. This is Benjamin Netanyahu, who for the last 30 years has a single point agenda: I've got to finish the regime in Iran, and he is thereby willing to do whatever it takes.
Prime Minister Netanyahu was among the first leaders in the world that signaled the danger of a genocidal, radical Islamic regime trying to possess weapons of mass destruction that would give them the chance to destroy the state of Israel. That has been his agenda, not regime change. Now, what we have to do here is remove a threat, because if Israel succeeds in defeating terrorism and radicalism, the forces of pragmatism will have a chance. We have consistently pursued peace. We have peace with Egypt, with Jordan. We achieved peace with the Abraham Accord countries. We did that because it's in their interest and our interest. And we didn't drag the United States. The United States has a strong leader that knows exactly what is better and what is best for his own country. So blaming our prime minister for dragging leaders of the world is a nice conspiracy theory that has no basis whatsoever.
Let me turn you back to October 7, 2023. Many believe that's where it started, the horrific, unacceptable, barbaric terror attack of Hamas in your country, which the world condemned universally. Since then, which is now about 20 months since then, Mr. Ambassador, we've seen Israel launch attacks on Gaza. Now, many believe these attacks are disproportionate. You and I had a bit of a Twitter exchange, which I should tell our viewers. It was a Twitter exchange which began when I put out a tweet, Mr. Ambassador: when Iran attacks a hospital in Israel, it's a war crime. When Israel attacks a hospital in Gaza, it's being justified because terrorists are supposedly hiding in hospital. You responded on Twitter saying you are wrong. Under international law, when a humanitarian facility is used for military purposes, it loses its immunity. I responded by saying killing and starving children has no place in international law or rules-based order either. Moral relativism in times of conflict needs a wider debate, Mr. Ambassador. Sir, you went on to say Palestinians deserve a decent leadership, not terrorists that use them as human shields, nor your moral relativity. Look forward to debate that. And we're debating that. Just look at what has happened since October 7th, sir. More than 54,000 Palestinians, many of them women and children, have been killed in Israeli bomb attacks. As I said, what happened on October 7th, unacceptable. What happened subsequently, or even the attack on hospitals in Palestine, in Gaza, how can you justify that?
Well, first of all, your numbers are wrong. Okay,
54,000 is wrong. I'm going by the Gazan Health Ministry. Well, Economist in its monthly, sir, Gazan.
That belongs to Hamas.
The Economist, which is respected, has said 1 lakh people have died. In their May report.
Let's break it down.
Yes.
We are not disputing that a lot of people have died,
including women and children.
Including women and children. This is a tragic, very tragic situation that was caused by Hamas. Now, out of the quantity that is being quoted that hasn't been able to be corroborated, finally, after a long time, a list of names was released. And what this list is ignoring is several things. First of all, in the last 20 months, many people have died from natural causes, about 10,000 of them. Israel has killed at least 20,000 Hamas terrorists. There was a lot of misfire that was misfired by Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad that caused thousands of people dead. So we have a situation that is very tragic, in which a lot of people have lost their lives, but compared to other warfare scenarios in urban dense areas, the ratio is actually pretty low. It's 1 to 1. In Mosul, for example, it was 1 to 8. For every Daesh terrorist, there were 8 civilians who died. And you know why? Because Israel has gone, in many ways, out of its way in order to save human lives, in order to try to get people out of harm's way. And it is Hamas that has been preventing evacuations. It is Hamas that is hitting food distribution centers and killing people. It is Hamas that is actually abusing any norm in the book, hiding inside ambulances, putting the headquarters under hospitals, putting the headquarters under UN installations, recruiting UN people. Can you believe, today, Jonathan Samarano, yesterday, was brought back to Israel. His corpse was brought back to Israel. Do you know that a UN worker abducted him from Israel? A UN worker that was a Hamas operative. So you have Hamas operatives disguising as UN workers, disguising as press, disguising as medical personnel, and they have been committing all these crimes. And despite that, thanks to the actions of Israel to put people out of harm's way, we have seen a relatively, and again, every loss of life is like the entire universe. This is what our tradition says. But in comparative terms, this has been a very low ratio of civilian casualties.
59% of the deceased are women, children, or elderly, according to the May study of The Economist. The numbers they believe are in far greater numbers than even the Gaza Health Ministry reports. Hospitals, at least 17 of them have been targeted. Many of them have been
all of them you have Hamas.
Are you telling me that in every hospital, in every school that has been targeted, you have underground Hamas shelters?
Yes.
But the world is condemning it. The UN Secretary General, UN human rights bodies are all saying Israel's response is disproportionate. You've ended up starving children because you've had blockades. You refused to allow UN aid to come in.
Let me give you the facts. Okay? Since this war began, and by the way, Israel has no responsibility to feed the enemy. But what we did is that we facilitated the entrance of 1.8 million tons of food. We had, on average, we had a situation in which at least 160 trucks per day entered the Gaza Strip. Okay? There was a period of time after the second ceasefire, after 25,000 trucks of food entered the Gaza Strip, in which we decided to stop in order to take the humanitarian assistance out from the hands of Hamas. Okay? So Hamas cannot use the sequestrated aid in order to continue its grip on the population. Because you know what was happening?
UN monitored aid. UN monitored aid. You seem to suggest that Hamas masquerades as UN workers. They hide inside hospitals. They hide inside schools. It's almost as if you've decided the entire population of Gaza is Hamas.
Well, first of all, if you see the data, you would see in the polls that were conducted by Palestinians that the highest majority of Gazans actually were supporting Hamas. But despite that...
That can't be a crime. Are you saying if I'm a civilian who supported a political authority which was...
I didn't say that. You said that you don't know whether these people are supporting Hamas or not.
No, that they're Hamas, that they're Hamas itself.
Okay, so there was support for Hamas, and despite that, we are acting according to international law. Look, we have lawyers that are approving each and every strike in the Gaza Strip. Every strike has a military purpose, okay? Every strike in the Gaza Strip has a military purpose. And
damaging, destroying more than 90% of the school and university buildings in Gaza, destroying more than half of the religious cultural sites in the territory, you're telling me has a military purpose, Mr. Ambassador?
Absolutely, because you had terrorists that were hiding there and building their command and control centers. And we had no choice but to act in order to defend ourselves. So you have a situation in which Hamas has sequestrated the future of the Palestinians. We have to do something to change that, because for the last 17 years, we have left completely the Gaza Strip in 2005. And only after a few months, this radical organization took over, and they radicalized the population for 17 years. They sequestrated everything they can. International organizations couldn't operate in the Gaza Strip without cooperating with Hamas. So now, at last, we have a hope that we'll be able to get rid of Hamas. That Hamas will leave the Gaza Strip, that the Palestinians will have a better future. They deserve a better future. We want to have a future of friendship with the Palestinian people, but you cannot achieve it when you have a radical organization that the only thing they care about, Golda Meir said once that we will have peace with the Arabs in the day they love their children more than they hate us. Unfortunately, Hamas hates us more than they love their children.
As we come to to conclude this, and we can debate Hamas also on another day, Mr. Ambassador, but the truth of the matter is, whether it's with Hamas or whether it's now in Iran, it seems as if Israel has anointed itself the role of some kind of a guardian of the Middle East, and using thereby its weaponry, using support from the United States to virtually dictate what happens to people in the Palestinian territories or indeed in Iran. Isn't that again morally unconscionable for a country to use war as a threat, as a bully, to virtually try and intimidate and oppress other peoples?
Well,
this is what for years Israel said the world had done to you, especially during the Second World War.
So let me answer. Israel was attacked on the 7th of October. Israel was attacked by Iran. What Israel did is a very natural thing. We defended ourselves to get rid of this ring of fire that Iran created around us. And by doing that, believe me, Rajdeep, we did not only ourselves a favor, we did a favor for the entire region, because the Iranian regime was terrorizing entire states. And we have actually cooperation, intelligence cooperation, military cooperation with many countries in the region that actually now, following the Abraham Accords, are working together with the United States to defend the skies of the Middle East.
So when some of these Arab leaders, or the Arab street certainly says that Benjamin Netanyahu is the reason for this destabilization, some of them even virtually go to, virtually accuse him of genocide. And this is not my words, these are words which are put in by global Western observers. How will you respond that your prime minister is being accused on the Arab street, or indeed even in some Western political commentary, of practicing genocide?
Well, that's nonsense, because there cannot be a genocide in a place like the Gaza Strip, in which in 1967, when we took over, were 300,000 people. Now there are 2 million people, okay? There cannot be genocide in Jerusalem. There were 30,000 Palestinians, and now there are 400,000. So that is maybe in reverse. So all the people that are using these terms, genocide, they don't have a clue what they're talking about. They're just sending accusations that are completely based.
That he's a warmonger who's now pushing, as I said, and we come back to where we started, with this Iran-Israel conflict, pushing the world closer and closer into a wider war.
Take it from me. Prime Minister Netanyahu will be remembered as the person that took care of the Iranian threat, that actually saved Israel from annihilation, that saved the Middle East from a tyrannical, radical Islamic regime that was throwing havoc in the region and that was toppling one regime after the other. Now, the Arab world has a chance. You have two capitals that now back in the Arab world. They were under Iranian control. That's Lebanon. You have now a future for Lebanon. This is not because Israel intervened in Lebanese politics. We only defended ourselves, but we relieved the region from this tyrannical, malevolent regime.
You've replaced Assad with those who were supporters or are supporters or once were supporters of the Islamic State.
But we didn't replace.
Mr. Ambassador,
no, sorry.
You're saying you didn't replace, but they've come to power.
You cannot say something
they've come to power.
That is not true. We didn't replace the regime in Syria.
They've come to power.
They've come to power. That's a fact that we are not responsible for.
Okay. Therefore, Mr. Ambassador, in conclusion, what's the end game? We are now, as I said, 36 hours after the Americans bombed these nuclear sites. Israel continues with its missile strikes. Iran continues to strike your country. What is the end game? Is there an end game in mind? Will we see a ceasefire sooner than later, or are we in for a protracted conflict?
Well, if you check, you will see that among the aims that were devised by the Israeli cabinet, the last item is a diplomatic solution. So yes, we seek a diplomatic solution in which Iran will finally take a logic path of, instead of belligerence,
a diplomatic solution after you've launched this concerted military attack.
We were in danger of extermination. You have to understand that. I said that at the outset. We seek a diplomatic solution in which Iran will stop its aggression, not only towards Israel, but towards the region, and we will be sure that we can engage back to our lives.
Are you hopeful of that? Are you hopeful, Mr. Ambassador,
very-
that within the next few days we could see that? Because Iran could escalate it by blocking the Straits of Hormuz, by cutting off oil supplies. Russia and China seem to be supporting, at least in the United Nations Security
haven't
Council,
seen
Iran.
any country-
Is that a concern?
First of all, I haven't seen any country supporting blocking the Straits of Hormuz. Number one.
No,
Number two.
they're supporting the idea of a ceasefire.
Number two, thanks to the actions of Israel, the capability of the Iranians to launch a renewed attack against other nations of the region, including the assets of the Americans in the region, has diminished substantially. And therefore, I'm very hopeful that either we will be able to get to a diplomatic solution, and we are ready for that, or the alternative would be that the Iranians will continue suffering from very heavy losses. So the path forward is a path that can create peace if the Iranians reverse their policy.
Okay. Mr. Ambassador, it is not often that a journalist and a diplomat engage in a kind of Twitter battle, but yet, just 2 days later, the ambassador comes to the studio and answers every question. I really appreciate that, because I think that is true democratic spirit at work. And you've taken all my questions on the chin and hit me back with a few more. But good to have you in the studio. And I think the world hopes sooner rather than later that peace returns. I don't think we want to see civilian casualties get caught in the crossfire between Iran and Israel, including in your country, I may say, Mr. Ambassador, or indeed in Iran. So there you have the Israeli ambassador to India, Reuven Azar, joining us and taking every question that we had thrown at him. He'll join us, I'm sure, in a few weeks' time, or maybe in a few days, because this is a rapidly developing situation. Thanks for watching. Stay well, stay safe.